and I'll keep it hush.
This is part 2 of a video I did on charity, and I'm reading to you from the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics. So go watch part 1 if you can find it. So I'm going to read this to you. It's picking up where I left off on that one. But estimated in this way, certain things become distinctive of it. A. Note its relation to hate. Love is the opposite of hate. The two are antithetic. Where the one is, the other is shut out. And yet, according to the psychologists, C.E.G. Bain's dissertations on leading philosophical topics, and he gives you the page number, both are native to human nature and they react on each other. It is a commonplace of psychology that hatred of a person whom one formerly loved is intensified by the very fact of the previous love. Just as previous dislike of a person may intensify our affection for him once we are drawn towards him. But Christian love excludes hatred of persons, misanthropy. Absolutely. If it were lawful to hate anyone, it would surely be one's enemies, and yet the Christian is commanded, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Matthew 5:44. The meaning of this is that both the measure and the nature of love are estimated from the standpoint of the love of Christ, and if the disciple is to be as his master, hatred must be expelled from his heart. And if hatred is expelled from his heart, along with it are expelled all the malignant emotions, anger, retaliation, revenge, envy, jealousy, and the like. Meekness is now raised to a supreme position, and to it is the final victory promised. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. I'd like to make a comment here. That doesn't mean that you don't practice biblical separation, like have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is shame to even speak of what is done by them in the dark. There in Ephesians 5:11 and 12. So, and mark those that cause divisions contrary to the doctrines that you have learned, and avoid them. And there in Romans chapter 16. And then after the first and second admonition, rebuke one who's a heretic, knowing he subverted his whole household. So just to make that clear in the context of what's being spoken here, yes, you love your enemies by telling them the truth, but they're going to hate you because you tell them the truth. So, okay, I'm going to continue on. B. Christian charity is not to be limited by consideration either of merit or of gratitude in the recipient. As it is required to be after the pattern of Christ's love, it must proceed on the lines of generosity and mercy, not on those of strict legal justice. Had Christ waited till mankind merited salvation, salvation would be still to seek. Had he insisted as a preliminary condition that his work must be repaid with immediate gratitude, the world would be heathen still, sitting in the darkness of the shadow of death. But what he did was quite different. Apart from merit and apart from gratitude on the side of the recipients, he poured out his love upon mankind and sealed it with his death. And on the cross he pardoned even before his mercy was asked for those who crucified him. Even at the very moment of their ignoble glorification and their ungodly deed, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. He was an all-embracing love, not swayed, his was an all-embracing love, not swayed by feelings or emotions of preferences, and the command to his disciples is, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. John 15:12. And C, in the last place, Christian charity on its practical side is to be guided by the golden rule. All things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Matthew 7:12. This is no mere dictate of prudence. It is not only a counsel of humanity and fellow feeling and a check to individual selfishness. As such, the rule is virtually common to all great ethical systems of whatsoever age and whatsoever country. It is an acknowledgement also that every human being is the creature of a God formed in his image, and as formed in his image is the object of Jesus' love, and that no one is to regard himself as of personal right dearer to the Creator than another, or of more intrinsic worth. Each is a human soul, none more, none less, bearing the divine stamp and potentially an heir of the promises. Yea, for each equally Christ died, so that all may become members of the same body. Under any view of it, the brotherhood of mankind is an organic unity, but in the Christian conception, it is organic in a special sense, namely because Christ is the head of humanity, and so binds men together by first binding them to himself and imparting to them of his own life. Christian charity, then, is love of men for the sake of God. God is revealed in Christ and is stimulated by the love of Christ for man. This implies that love to God comes first in our estimation, and that in this love the other has its origin and its significance. Brotherly affection in the Christian sense is found on piety. What, then, is the relation between Christian charity and the allied Christian graces? Faith and hope? Clearly, charity is the atmosphere in which they live and thrive, or it is the motive power by which they are actuated. If faith means acceptance of Christ's word and trust in him, his person, then of necessity it worketh by love, Galatians 5:6, and is really effective only when love is supreme. If in like manner we mean by hope expectation based on the divine promises, then again love becomes the moving force, for expectation cannot be kept up in the face of earthly troubles, in the face of delay and hindrances and disappointments. Much less could it increase, as it usually does, as the believer's life advances, if it were not prompted and sustained from this source. Love is not only what St. Paul calls it, the greatest of the Christian graces, 1 Corinthians 13:13, it is also the stimulator and the indispensable condition of the other two. 2. Consequences. That being so, let us see the practical consequences of Christian charity, as its basis is love to God issuing in love to man for God's sake. Obviously, Christian charity is the supreme dissolvent of all barriers, opinions, feelings, habits, customs, prejudices, principles alike, that would keep man apart from man, of all distinctions that are of the nature of caste, and that would foster self-importance in the individual and lead to injustice and contempt towards others. For the same reason, it overflows in good works, in deeds of practical beneficence, including, of course, the negative beneficence of restraint, or refraining from insult and the infliction of injury when revenge is in our power. In this way, it goes far beyond even what we attain by the high-minded man of Aristotle, who readily forgets injuries, and is not apt to speak evil of others, not even of his enemies, except with the express purpose of giving offense. Perhaps it may be thought that the sentiment of universal brotherhood, such for instance as the Stoics cherished, would do the same thing, but the difference lies here. The sentiment of universal brotherhood is simply on the plane of morality and natural or social affection. Christian charity rises higher and grounds the sentiment in religion in apprehension of the fatherhood of God and the universal redemption wrought out by Christ. The point of view in the two cases is entirely different, but the results achieved are different also. The cosmopolitanism of the Stoics, though noble in many ways and conducive to tolerance and sympathetic regard for others, did not effect any widespread reformation in the world. It was very much a doctrine and a sentiment of the philosophers, confined therefore to the few and not practically operative for the many. But Christian charity, inspired from above and directed to divine ends, is no mere philosophical doctrine. It appeals to all mankind, has effected great things, and has in it the energy to effect more. To it, civilization owes an enormous debt. It has been largely instrumental in the elevation and emancipation of women, and in the abolition of slavery in the world. It has broken down race antipathies of long standing and shown the true nature of class distinctions, and it has made friends of foes in many instances when war and hostile opposition would only have embittered enmity and made hatred all the more intense. What still further it has done on the side of philanthropy and charitable institutions, thus taking under its wing the poor, the degraded, and the needy, and of humans treated both of human beings and of the lower animals, and how it has entirely changed men's views of human life, impressing them with the notion of its sacredness and the duty of conserving it, need only to be mentioned. If, notwithstanding the Parliament of man, the federation of the world has not come and seems long in coming, if even in Christian countries great social questions are still unsolved and oppression has not fled the earth, if capital and labor are still at feud and man's inhumanity to man makes countless thousands mourn, that is not the fault of Christian charity, but arises from the imperfect appreciation of what Christian charity really is by many of those who profess adherence to the Christian faith. It will come when men fully realize the meaning of the two sayings, if a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother whom he hath seen cannot love God whom he hath not seen. And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God loveth his brother also. 1 John 4:24. And by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye love one to another. John 13:35. 3. The term charity. This is the English equivalent through French of the Latin caritas. Now, caritas in Latin originally meant preciousness, high price, dearness, and in its secondary sense it was applied, so Cicero tells us, to love of the gods, of one's parents or one's country, and the like, while love of wives and children and brothers was more properly designated amor. If that is so, then esteem is the essence of the sentiment, and the idea of value attaches to the object of it. In that way, it is a term particularly suitable for the Christian's vocabulary, and may very well be used to translate the New Testament agape, in which, rather than any synonymous Greek term such as agapesis or philia, the same two ideas of worth or value and esteem are prominent, and where also the application is first made to man's attitude towards God, charity is very proper English for agape, derivation and classical English usage alike conforming, and it may be doubted without carping whether the RV or the New Testament has done well in uniformly translating agape by love. On the other hand, it is perfectly obviously how the term charity should have come to contract its present narrowing meaning of consideration for the poor, the outcast, the needy, the infirm, so that a charitable contribution is a contribution in behalf of one or other of these, and a charitable institution is one maintained by voluntary liberality for their benefit. The poor, the outcast, the needy, the infirm were Jesus' peculiar care, and he left them as a special heritage to his followers. Nevertheless, while it is charity to help the needy, whom evil fortune has overtaken, or to minister to the wants of the afflicted and the weak who cannot adequately provide for themselves, it is no less charity to try to prevent the need for such help, and to remove the conditions of society which bring members of the community into straitened and harrowing circumstances. By the figure of synecdoche, a part has been put for the whole, but the wider meaning of the term is the correct one, and it may fitly be retained. Alright, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I know that was a bit, but that is Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics by James Hastings, and that was in the article Charity. So, well, sorry. I hope y'all enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Bye.
And I'll keep it hush.